Hello, everyone. We are live. It's Buckeye Huddle Crew, Mark Givler, Kevin Noon, Tony Gerdeman. This will be a Skull Session recruiting podcast as well, if anyone wants to go back and listen later. But just, wanted to have a live conversation here down in San Antonio for All-American Bowl. A lot going on with that, with recruiting, transfer portal, all the normal craziness of a January. So I just wanted to kind of gather around here and we'll go through some questions and things like that. But this will be pretty much listener, watcher driven. We're going to answer questions from the message board. You guys are encouraged to punch questions through in the chat if you're watching on YouTube, and we'll get to those as well. But Kevin, where did you want to start here?
I think the best place is let's kind of set the scene a little bit with what the event is. We've just seen the numbers quadruple since we hit go to where we are now. Give people a little bit of an opportunity, but the history of this bowl for people that are unfamiliar. This used to be the U.S. Army All-American Bowl. Now it is the All-American Bowl. But how many years has this been for you, Mark, in covering this event in San Antonio? Certainly there've got to be some memories of some great players that you've seen at the very early stages of prolific careers at this event.
Yeah, I've been doing this, I think, every year since like 2012. I want to say 12 or 13.
Yeah, 13,
every year
years.
we lost a year to COVID. But I've pretty much been down here every year for like a decade now. So, man, where to start? The Darnay Holmes recruitment kind of played out in real time down here. That's one of my lasting memories is watching him come down here and essentially looked like he was going to commit to Ohio State, hanging out with all the Ohio State guys at practice all week. And then his dad flew down on, I want to say it was Wednesday, but it was midweek. So it may have been Thursday. It was Wednesday or Thursday that week. His dad flies into town and the entire mood changes. And instead of being with all the Ohio State guys at practice, he's like 50 yards away from anybody. It's like him and Najee Harris randomly, like, I guess they're both California guys. Him and Najee Harris just randomly like sitting together quietly during breaks and after practice and everything, like literally on the other side of the field from every other human. And that's when I realized, oh, this isn't happening. So the story is that dad kind of came down and said, like, you're not going to Ohio State, you're not going to California. And I think there was some infighting within the family of, well, okay, like, is it USC or UCLA? And UCLA, I think, became the compromise school because I don't think Darnay wanted to go to USC. So that is like one of my all-timers. Just watching that play out in real time and just the mood change midweek was incredible. But they landed Jeff Okudah here officially. I think I remember Chase Young having a dominant practice week here. That was kind of the first real glimpse I'd had of Chase Young. I had not seen him play in high school, and it was kind of pretty easy to call Chase Young a future star watching him down here. And so there's been some performances over the years that really stick with you. And again, I think more than that though is probably the Darnay Holmes type drama stuff is more than anything. I see great performances all the time in high school games and camps across the country, but it's the drama that's happened here over the years. And I could tell a great Glenville story at some point, but
I know the one you're referring to.
yeah, I think I may have even told it one time, either on the board or on a podcast.
That's a behind the paywall. So if you want to hear that one, be sure to sign up for
Subscribe for that
BuckeyeHuddle.com.
one.
We're going to keep that one behind the paywall.
The Darnay Holmes is also his little nephew or little cousin, pointing at the Ohio State hat, and he was bummed out when he went with UCLA.
He didn't get the memo.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, that was a whole week of just again, that just totally 180 there on Ohio State. And just it was just crazy seeing the mood change. You leave practice one day and he's yucking it up with all the Ohio State commits, all the Ohio State guys who were down here, and really not leaving too much of a secret of kind of where he was going to be picking on Saturday. And then you show up the next day and where's Darnay? Oh, he's 100 yards in that direction, sitting quietly with Najee Harris, won't talk to the Ohio State guys, can't look at him. Like, oh my God, what happened? And so I said, yeah, his dad got in last night. I was like, oh, okay.
Well, there's a rumor that for television purposes, when the guys get in, they're the ones that are making decisions are supposed to kind of alert the producers as to what's going on. And there's certainly been times through the years where the minds change from the time that they get down there to the time that the bright lights of the television cameras are on them.
Yeah, there's been some situations of that. There's been some situations that are almost 180 of that, where the kid comes down, he does all the interviews, and he tells everyone, oh, so-and-so leads or this, that, and the other. And then you quietly find out that maybe the television people have been told something different. And so then it becomes, okay, is he lying in the interviews or is he lying to television? And usually it's the interviews that is not getting the accurate description of where he might be going. So we had one of those one of my first years down here, actually. And it was actually a kid that people were claiming was going to go to Ohio State. And I was like, no, he's not. And even I think some of the coaches at the time at Ohio State were like, oh yeah, we're going to get him. I'm like, no, you're not.
No, you're not.
you're really not. So it's been fun kind of doing this. It's almost like a ritual for me at this point. Just get down here, you see the same people, just go to the same places, eat at the same restaurants, walk the same streets, because I always stay downtown. I can walk to the Alamo Dome from here. So it's, like I said, I always joke that I know downtown San Antonio better than I know downtown Columbus, because I've had to walk it so much.
Have you been to Yard House yet?
Not yet. You kind of wore me out on that last year, Kevin. We'd go into Yard House like every day.
But the chicken nachos.
I know.
The nachos are fantastic.
Well, they had some good beverages too. There were some good beverages. Obviously they have a lot of great beer selection, but they had, what was it? It was a blueberry, or I can't remember, blueberry or strawberry mules there last year.
I remember you getting the mule last year.
I might have had one. I think I just had one.
Just one.
I've always preferred the Army, now the All-American Bowl, to the Under Armour game as a television product. It looks like a better television product. Have you ever done the Under Armour game?
Just once. It's just been a weird thing. It's not that I'm against the Under Armour game or anything. I just usually Ohio State, for whatever reason, and I'll never quite understand this, but Ohio State's like 80-90% of their kids play in San Antonio versus the Under Armour game. That's kind of just always been a thing. I don't know if it's because it's a more popular game in like Ohio, and a lot of those kids, especially early on, those Glenville kids were all playing in the Army Bowl, and kind of the Army Bowl reps had such a great relationship with Tedkin Sr. And so I don't know if it started with that or what the case may be, but for whatever reason, if there's 10 Ohio State players playing in these all-star games, it feels like every year it's like 8 of them are in San Antonio. And so it's just kind of makes the decision for me.
So you're
Yeah, so
saying the ESPN bias starts really young.
That's why ESPN we're getting to the bottom of it. That's why ESPN hates Ohio State so much. They don't send their recruits to the Under Armour game.
well, neither of them are Nike. I mean, you got the Under Armour game, which is
right.
Under Armour, and then the All-American Bowl has been Adidas. So, it's not necessarily a shoe war type of situation or anything like that either.
I miss the ESPN Spark stuff, that all of those combines that they used to have. Like, I realized they probably made zero money and lost tons of money on it, but as a college football fan and a recruiting fan, like, that was all fantastic because it gave you so many numbers and just more information to work with.
I was a big fan of running around with the parachute on your back and what that meant, and throwing the medicine ball and everything. We always would see guys that would be spark warriors, and I'm just
Like Mitchell.
not naming anybody because of what I'm about to say. Spark warriors, but not much of a football player. And then guys that would go on and be fantastic football players and have good, not great spark scores because they weren't all about the ladder drill.
Yeah,
Mark, let me ask you this, because I think the 40 is going out of style because of the GPS stuff that is tracking the MPH, the miles per hour.
Yeah,
and we don't talk a lot about the 40 as much anymore. And I think coaches are more in tune with all of the GPS stuff rather than the stopwatch.
Yeah, we're getting into what do we call it, advanced analytics, I guess, as more and more are coming up here, and it is interesting. You don't see necessarily some of those measurables harped on as much anymore.
They still do all of it, but we don't talk about it
yeah.
necessarily as much.
Yeah, it's not as, I don't know. I can't tell you that. I'll tell you what comes up more for me than 40 when I talk to college coaches is track times, 100 meters, 200 meters, sometimes even 400, just because it's such a man's race. Like it's literally like the hardest race. And so they kind of, we'll take a look at something like that. But yeah, it's become not nearly as important. And I never really get asked like what's his 40, or I never really hear people ask about what their 40 is. I hear people like, what do they have track? Do they run track? What are their track times?
Well, we're queuing up a lot of questions here. We have questions from BuckeyeHuddle.com. We have questions here in the chat. I'm not going to punch them up necessarily in the order I got them. I'm going to try and follow a little bit of a plan here in terms of talking more specifically about the camp, and then maybe some wider issues, and also trying to sprinkle in some questions from the board as well. But let's start first with Glasswing Butterfly. Aren't these guys signed already?
Yes, all the Ohio State guys that are down here are signed. There are, I think, a couple guys down here who aren't, but it's not Ohio State relevant. But yeah, they it didn't always used to be that way. Obviously, when they moved to the early signing, when they invented the early signing period and placed it in the middle of December, that's when this kind of started. You would have guys who would enroll early, and they would normally sign some type of paperwork. It was kind of different than an LOI back in the day. You would have to sign some early enrollment paperwork, and you'd have situations like that in the past. But yeah, the early signing period has kind of eliminated some of the intrigue here, and now you start to see more of like they'll have like a junior or two announce this week.
And I'll follow up with another question from Glasswing about what exactly does a letter of intent mean? And, because not much these days, because we're seeing guys are skipping that route.
Yeah. I mean, do you want the real answer is basically nothing at this point, given the transfer portal and the freedom of movement the players have now. Practically all it means is basically if a school wants to be jerks, they can try and fight a transfer, but it's even now with the one, it's just not. So yeah, it's funny. It not what it used to mean.
Yeah, basically now it just secures your spot on the team in the class.
it used to be a thing that the school would want
Mm-hmm.
to gain leverage. Now it's more kind of the opposite. Now it's like, especially, if you're a 5-star kid, you don't have to worry about it. But if you're in a 20-man class and you're the 17th or 18th ranked player in that class, you want to get that thing signed. But it doesn't. There's a lot of stuff that doesn't really mean much in college football anymore. Offers, so
Are those capital letters or non-capital letters?
Right. Yeah, it's just man. There's a larger angle here to, what does letter of intent mean? What does any of the, there's so much right now that doesn't mean what it's supposed to mean.
I mean, ask Brew McCoy about that. I mean, we've got guys that are transferring before really they ever get on campus. I mean, it's the Wild Wild West, and the NC2A, in my opinion, really allowed this to happen with its hesitancy to put any guardrails in place. And shockingly, cars are careening off the highway now.
My favorite NIL or LOI letter of intent story will always be Darrell Price, who was a running back in like the class of 94, 95, 96, faxing in his letter of intent to Ohio State, but he faxed it in upside down. So Ohio State only got blank pages, and he took that as a sign from God that he needs to go to UCLA, which then freed up a scholarship offer for Niall Diggs, who ended up being an All-American linebacker at Ohio State and was overlooked by people because of LeVar Arrington at the same time was like this ungodly player. Niall Diggs was just like a notch below him, but he was a really, really good player for Ohio State, and they got him because somebody put the fax pages in upside down.
And Niall Diggs had a sister or a cousin that was dating a coach somewhere, maybe it was UCLA or something, and the coach had gotten let go or something, and it kind of opened up Niall Diggs's purview of where he might go. So it's just crazy how some of those things work out, and we certainly have heard the stories and seen the moms running away with the letters of intent and I'm not going to sign this and everything else. I mean, now that we're moving more to electronic communication and the fax machine is gone, maybe we'll never have another Darrell Price story in that specific that set of circumstances.
Was that Alex Collins whose mom didn't want him to go to Arkansas?
Mom was 0 for 2 because then there was also an LSU Alabama situation as well.
Landon Collins' mom pitched a fit about Alabama LSU. She went at LSU, I guess. I think it was, right? Because he went to Bama.
Yeah. I would have thought that Kevin would be down there covering this thing and snagging some 3x3s at In-N-Out. I went last year after the Rose Bowl. This year it was a little bit too much uncertainty because if Ohio State would have beaten Georgia in the Peach Bowl, I would have been off to Los Angeles, and that's a lot of travel. And then there's a chance I could have been gone 3 weeks. And last year when I did this, I flew out from the Rose Bowl to San Antonio, and it was 2 weeks gone. And Mark and I certainly have gone on 2-week Southern swings before, and that's a lot of travel. That's a long time to be away. So I certainly was having some FOMO today watching the clips up there. I certainly was having some FOMO seeing that Mark had to pick and choose which practice he was going to be at. It was a lot easier with us both there. He could be at East, I could be at West, or vice versa. But it just didn't work out this year.
And besides, you would have been doing 4x4s anyway. I mean, this is completely wrong.
Well, spoiler alert, if Ohio State would have gone to the championship game, I'd already announced internally that I was going to do a 6x6. Why? I certainly don't need it. Just to show that it can be done. I'm not Adam Richman. I'm not that Casey dude either, but I can put down a 6x6, I think. I don't know if I could walk away and live to tell the tale, but I'm all about good television.
You wouldn't have to walk away and live to tell it. We'd have it on camera.
Well, you guys would have to wheelbarrow me back to the car or to the morgue. I'm not quite sure.
He'll come get you.
Geez, that took a.
That's dark. That's dark. This is Buckeye Huddle after dark though. So let me jump around here. We got one saying Jermaine Matthews should be at the All-American game. And I'm a big fan of Jermaine Matthews, if nothing else, just because that kid's got swag. I love that kid's swag. That's not even the word of the day anymore. I don't know what the cool kid word is, but whatever it is, that kid's got it.
Gumption.
Yeah, I would have loved to have
not
seen him
gumption,
down here.
it's not moxie.
Yeah, he's a heck of a player. He's a super competitive kid, but he'll be in the mix. I think maybe even this fall, given what we've seen the last couple of days here with the portal and kind of what the outlook is right now. It's open for him or a Calvin Simpson Hunt to come in and play. I mean, you got Denzel Burke and Jordan Hancock are the odds-on favorites, and I'm sure they're going to find a role for Jair Brown, and maybe that would even be kind of be in the nickel corner or nickel. I guess it's really the nickel corner, but kind of safety position. And but after that, up for grabs.
What did you think of? What have you thought of Calvin Simpson Hunt? The little that you've seen so far.
Yeah, I finally got to see him today. Saw him both practices. He's really good. He had gave up 2 catches that I remember. One of them was Carnell Tate, who's been fantastic. The other one was Malachi Coleman, who's going to Nebraska. Who's like a 6'5" receiver, and it was perfect coverage, just kind of like a circus catch. When I think the ball was even separated from him at some point, he was just able to kind of corral it on his way to the ground. So he's been really good. He's physical. He's interesting to watch. I don't know if it's like his stride is like, you don't think he's moving fast, but no one is separating from him. It's not like a long, it's like a choppy, I don't even know how to describe it, but like, I just watch him. He's kind of like has these little like choppy little short steps, and no one really has been able to separate from him other than Carnell on that one play earlier today. So he's been really good. He's strong. The thing I like about him is he's already very, very strong. So he's not one of those guys. Some of these guys, you look at them, these corners are like 170 pounds, and you're like, oh boy, that's going to take some time. They're not going to be able to handle. You got to handle Marvin Harrison Jr. in practice. You better be ready to be physical. He's already got a very strong build to him, and he's got that track speed that, talking about track times earlier. He's a good 100-meter, 200-meter guy. And so, I think he's really good. I think it's going to be interesting to see between him and Jermaine Matthews kind of, how that could shake out. One of them I think is going to have to play.
Well, I don't think any of us necessarily thought that Denzel Burke was going to be the first one, Father Tony, that he was going to be the first one out of that class to see the field.
No, you never know. Yeah, he was kind of the forgotten man in that class and was kind of the guy we all thought would take a little longer to get there just because he played so much receiver in high school. But sure enough, there he is. And it's, Jordan Hancock's been kind of just unable to stay healthy. And that's kind of been a big thing. So that's, I think that's the kind of the underrated thing that no one ever talks about really is like, yes, talent, yes, work ethic, like scheme and coaching, but like so much of this is almost luck in terms of just staying healthy your first year or two on campus so that you can get those reps and get your opportunities to impress the coaches.
Let's jump to a couple questions off the message board that are specifically about the bowl practices. We have a lot of great questions here in the chat. Please keep firing them in there. We will get to them. Waniac, thoughts on Luke Montgomery and specifically the whooping he took on that rep from Keon Keeley? Sounds like he was pretty solid, so that was much more of an isolated incident. Luke looks stout and close to being a kid ready to compete physically in the Big Ten, but I know he's still pretty green to OL play.
So, first of all, he was much better today. He was very good today at right guard and right tackle. And he wasn't bad yesterday. Everyone's going to kind of point to that rep against Keon Keeley, but I watched him all day. Was solid in 11-on-11, didn't give up any sacks, pressures, anything like that. Was holding up really well in pass protection. Didn't do a ton of run game stuff, but he was able to kind of move guys a little bit in the run game. Was able to do that again today. Again, worked mostly at right guard today, worked a little bit at right tackle. I'm told he's going to get his first shot at Ohio State at left tackle. So the other thing I'll say is nobody has blocked Keon Keeley all week. He's been the best player in this event the last 2 days. And I don't know how anyone's going to block him on Saturday because they did an inter-squad scrimmage today, and it was awfully easy. It would make me very nervous if I was a West quarterback for the game on Saturday.
That that bull rush reminded me of Alex Williams against Nicholas Petit-Frere in fall camp of 2018. Alex Williams just got Nicholas Petit-Frere perfectly, just completely ran him over. So let that be a lesson in terms of taking.
I was just gonna say, are you calling Keon Keeley Alex Williams? Is that what we're calling? Is that where we're going with that?
No, I'm just saying, don't let one faulty pass set against a one-on-one situation cloud your judgment. Not you, Mark, the people out there, and because I know NFL scouts and all kinds of scouts hate the one-on-one stuff for offensive linemen's sake because it's impossible.
They do. Well, they do, but it's funny. Everyone hates them. College coaches hate them. But what do we see when we go to a college camp? They run them anyway. I would like to ask. I'm not gonna waste valuable time with Justin Fry or something like that. At when he's got a 20-minute media availability twice a year, and all the beat writers are gonna be staring holes through me that I'm talking about this. But I would love to get some of these guys on the record as you guys hate this drill so much.
Why do you run it?
Why do you run it at your camps? If everyone just stopped running it, it would go away. If you stopped running it at your camp.
And if everybody ignored the troll in the room, we would never talk to Tony.
Yeah, there we go.
But it's like if they see an offensive lineman go undefeated in all of these one-on-ones, they'll be like, see, we knew we had a unicorn. But you knew that from watching him in the 3-on-3s or the 5-on-5s. You knew that anyway. What does this one-on-one tell you? I don't know.
Yeah.
Let's jump to another couple of questions. Westlake Buckeye with several. I'm going to skip one because we've already kind of talked about it. How much does Lincoln Kienholz remind you of Burrow after seeing him live?
Oh boy, I know. We got in trouble with that, didn't we? The whole. I'm not the only one. I'm not lumping myself. I'm not isolating myself here. I think the entire Ohio State beat has drawn some athletic parallels there. Look, so I watched him quite a bit today. Solid in the morning, was having some struggles there in 11-on-11. Was missing a lot of balls were coming up short. He's just kind of skipping just low. Now some of them were getting caught, but they were down at the knees. So he's got some stuff to work on mechanically, but he's tall. He's probably close to 6'4". He looked like one of the tallest quarterbacks out there today. He's got a really good arm. The thing that makes Joe Burrow isn't really his physical gifts. I think you would find a lot of guys who are more physically gifted than Joe Burrow. It's just kind of his leadership and his just intangibles. It's just hard to kind of put your finger on it, what it is. But it's we used to talk about this when he was at Ohio State. Everyone loves Joe Burrow. He was the most popular player in the locker room. He wasn't even, he was a third string quarterback, the most popular. So that's kind of really what makes him. But yeah, are they both about the same size coming out of high school? Yes. Are they both multi-sport athletes, athletic? Yes. Did I ever think Joe Burrow would be the number one pick in the NFL draft? No. So I don't know. It's kind of a hard comparison right now because there are things about him that remind you of high school Joe Burrow, but then you have to remind yourself that high school Joe Burrow ended up being the number one pick in the NFL draft. So it's going to be awfully difficult for anyone to live up to that. So I want to see with him. I want to see him tomorrow because he was fine in the morning, but they didn't do a lot in the morning. There's a brief 7-on-7 period, and he did everything he should have done in that period. And then 11-on-11 got away from him a little bit. I don't think he threw any interceptions. He did. Malik Hartford dropped one on him that Malik should have caught in the end zone, but What I want to see is his response tomorrow, because he didn't. There's no way he's like happy with how he did this afternoon. Like, it just, even like I said, even the balls he completed, there were some that just weren't where they needed to be thrown. So I want to see him respond, and I want to see him, of all the kids here, this has to be the biggest adjustment for him as far as competition and speed of the game. I mean, he's just not, you're going this inter squad scrimmage, and you're used to throwing, these balls down the seam against kids who are, 5'9", 165 pounds, running 4.8 40s. And now your balls down the seam are being, closed on by Malik Hartford and Caleb Downs. I mean, that's, you can't possibly make a bigger jump in competition. So I want to see him tomorrow and kind of, grade him after a couple of days.
You mean this isn't Division II or Division III South Dakota football? I mean, he didn't even play in the largest division, so this isn't equal. Just like playing at the Plains wasn't necessarily the same as playing D1 in Ohio.
No, not the same. Even like you said, even Joe Burrow, Joe Burrow played a couple of great games down the stretch. I was his last 2 high school games. He played DeSales and played Toledo Central Catholic in the state championship. Those 2 programs would win like every game by like 100 points in South Dakota. So even Burrow, coming at from a smaller school, faced much better competition than Lincoln has seen. But like the arm talent is there. Like it's interesting. The arm talent is there. You can see it. He threw some really good deep balls. One of them, Calvin Simpson Hunt actually broke up, but he dropped it right in the bucket, and Simpson Hunt just got a hand in there and broke it up. So there are things about him that are super interesting. I just, I want to see him kind of come back tomorrow and like, okay, how is he throwing it now after he's had a day to kind of adjust? Because I think it was a lot of on air yesterday, and then today was the inter squad thing. And again, trying to throw down the middle with Malik Hartford and Caleb Downs patrolling is just a different monster than anything he's ever seen.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be interesting to see how he recalibrates and how well he can do that, because he is seeing the level of talent he's never seen before. I also think with the comparisons to Joe Burrow, you can't get a good comparison in a camp setting. Joe Burrow sets himself apart also in games, and how he responds in certain situations. You will get an opportunity to see how Lincoln Keenholz responds to what he did today. So I think that'll be interesting. But so much of Joe Burrow also is, what happens during the games and how he leads his team.
Not a good Elite 11 quarterback, Joe Burrow.
Yeah.
Like objectively not good at Elite 11, like could not really do the t-shirt shorts thing. It just doesn't, it's interesting. Like there are guys who are just not built for that. And that's obviously, not the most important, you want the guys who's built for real football, but you can see guys who throw the hell out of it at the Elite 11 type setting, and they can't carry that to the football field. And then there's guys you watch at Elite 11 and you're like, that guy's got 25 offers. What, his average arm, he's not throwing it through the hoop. Like, what's going on here? And then you watch him play real football. I was like, oh, okay.
Joe Burrow wasn't spending all of his time playing 7-on-7 during the summer and things like that. He was just playing football and baseball and basketball and whatever else he could do to stay busy.
Yep.
We have this question in like triplicate. We have it from El Suzabo. We have it on the message board as well, kind of getting away from the game, but still in the world of football and everything else. What's up with Kenyatta Jackson? Are we losing him to the portal? And then, of course, is Miami dropping the bag, which everybody wants to talk about in this world of NIL, and is it tampering? Is it not tampering or whatever? I mean, kind of where we are with that is whenever a player drops mention of their school on social media, the world gets set on fire. And whenever I try to dismiss it, then we have a Dylan Raiola situation where he drops all of the Ohio State stuff from his profile and then subsequently decommits from Ohio State. And then I can't say that anymore because people are going to say, see, I told you. So, yeah, where do we stand with Kenyatta Jackson? Tony, since Mark's kind of a little incommunicado in San Antonio, flip a coin. I mean, what are your thoughts here on this one?
Well, there's levels to this. Whenever there's a cryptic tweet, I tell people don't read into what a 17, 18, 19-year-old tweets. Just don't. It could be anything. It could be a song lyric. It could be a response to a friend. It could be anything. But seemingly, if like we were to break this down in hat science type of terms, I think there is definitely meaning to removing all affiliation on social media. Now, could this be a rebranding? Sure. Nowadays, I'm not putting anything past this, but if you want to create a stir, remove affiliation. I don't know who pays attention to this stuff. I don't know who is clicking on profiles
Guys
and
and
then
coaching
seeing.
guys.
Yeah, I don't understand. Oh, geez, I better go see if Kenyatta Jackson still has Ohio State in his profile. Oh no, he doesn't. Oh no. So I don't I don't think you can ever say it's good. I talked to Larry Johnson about Kenyatta Jackson last week, and he was super excited about him. Talking about how he's already filling out, and I talked to him about how he's one of those guys that the before and after picture that Ohio State likes to show in their social media. He's going to be one of the best ones ever because he came in at 225 pounds or whatever, and then he's already putting on weight. So Larry Johnson was only speaking glowingly about him, but I refuse to be surprised by anything players do anymore. That's just my line in the sand.
And I mean, if I'm right, Kenyatta Jackson, he came out of Chaminade Madonna.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I mean, a program that Ohio State has been recruiting heavily. Obviously, picked up the commitment from Jeremiah Smith. Still pursuing Josiah Trader, but Mark, dare I say, South Florida, going to South Florida, even after they get there. I mean, and that's not. I say that with much love, peace and love. But South Florida, going to South Florida.
I think college football going to college football at this point. A big problem here is there are so few people in these guys' ear about positive things about, hey, now's your time. Now, this needs to be your best 6 months to get ready for next season. There's an opportunity here to work yourself into quite a bit of playing time.
Mm-hmm.
And set yourself up for your third year, which, is the money year for everybody at this point. And instead it's, why don't you go here where you can start, or, this program's offering, this or this. It's just like, these guys are not often getting sound advice. Like or even more than that, they're not often getting positive reinforcement. They're oftentimes everything in their ear is about why they should change schools, whether that's playing time, money, whatever it is. And these are guys who have been the best player on their team pretty much all their lives. And you get smacked with reality pretty quickly as a freshman that you're not the best player on the team anymore. And it's going to be one hell of a fight to get into the lineup, let alone be the best player on the team. And when you have people kind of clawing at you, I think this is true for a lot of guys at places like Ohio State and Alabama that recruit these 5-star kids. Is you have to kind of keep recruiting the young guys until they've kind of established themselves. You have to really keep recruiting them because there's homesickness, there's money, there's family telling them, "Oh, why don't you come play closer to home?" There's people in their ear telling them that you can get them this NIL money. It's a lot. So I don't overreact to this type of stuff, but I also think with this one, I think Tony made a good point. I mean, it's a little suspicious with kind of what he's done. That being said, how do you guys know what you memorize what his bio was before?
Well, that's my question.
There's not a button you can click on that says, show me what his bio looked like yesterday. Right?
No, I don't think there's a revisions button that we can go in.
To removed it, you had to know that it was on there. Do people just memorize 100 players' Twitter bios? And so when something changes, they know, I don't understand that. I couldn't even tell you what my Twitter bio says right now. I mean, I'm sure it has something
stupid about the
Buckeye
Eagles.
Huddle and like what I do, but like I couldn't recite it to you. And if you took a word or two out of it, if you remove something from it, I probably wouldn't know. Like I'm kind of fascinated by all this.
Yeah, and me, the guy who's like, Ohio State doesn't always wear gray in their sleeves. Like, I'm the last guy to ask about who. Did you notice this? I didn't notice anything. I'm not a noticer. Things go over my head in those terms. I want to address Market X here. Do we know if Marvin had a concussion? I did talk to him after the game in the locker room. I know he looked like he was out during the game. He looked like he was knocked out. He said he never lost consciousness. He said he was aware the whole time. Ryan Day said after the game, I don't know how you can have a concussion but not be targeted in the head. Like he was questioning the targeting call. So they were definitely treating him as if he had a concussion. But Marvin, not that you need to be knocked out necessarily to have a concussion, but he said he was aware the whole time and he was awake. So take that for what it's worth.
Question that's asked a couple times on the huddle as part of BuckeyeHuddle.com. Any uncommitted names floating around for the final signing day of 2023? I mean, obviously, most of the players or all of the players that are uncommitted at this point or unsigned or undeclared at the All-American Bowl, are most of the way through their process, all the way through their process. So maybe not necessarily the players that Mark is seeing down there, but through the channels or whatever, are we hearing any other names? I mean, or is this all Portal City, which will obviously lead into a very obvious next question?
Yeah, I mean, I think right now the focus is the portal. Jamarian Wilcox is likely headed to Kentucky. I think right now Ohio State's kind of recruiting the guys they have at running back. I think they're trying to keep that room as intact as possible. Looked like Dallin Hayden certainly seemed to indicate that there's no portal worries there, despite speculation and doomsday rumors that Tennessee was going to throw $10 million at him or whatever. The Twitter rumor of the day was with Dallin Hayden. So I don't think so. I think right now the mindset is find some players that can help next year and worry about recruiting with 24. And that's probably sound advice right now, just because there's not much out there. There may be a hidden gem or two out there, but there's not a whole lot in terms of, these 5-star players. I know Cormani McLean is out there. I know the hat, little weird hat thing at Under Armour.
I didn't even know what hat he was handed.
I don't know. I'm pretty sure that was someone down there who is an Ohio State fan who was just kind of messing with him, and
But wouldn't that have been something?
Right. So yeah, I don't.
It could be right there with your Darnay Holmes story.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So gosh, recruiting's weird, but I don't.
Is that right?
I don't think they're going to do much.
Recruiting is weird.
Yes.
Truer words have never been spoken on this channel. Recruiting is, in fact, weird. And now that we have to live in this portal era, which, again, let's be honest, there were always guys leaving programs. They just had to sit out a year. So movement is not new. Immediate movement is kind of new. And Kevin S., among others, what do you see as the portal pickup priorities right now? I think we can dovetail out of this to talking a little bit about Jahad Carter, the safety that Ohio State just picked up from Syracuse. But I think we all have our ideas, and I bet you we even kind of agree upon them about what Ohio State should be going after. I mean, that doesn't necessarily mean they're going to find dude. This isn't a case of, well, we're just going to take 6 bodies and hope for the best. Ohio State's been very selective in terms of its portaling. And in doing so, as I have cats fighting in here, don't ever get a kitten when your older cat freaking hates everything. On that note, what do you see as portal pickup priorities as I kind of regather myself and make sure I didn't lose any parts?
I don't think Tony can talk right now, so I'll go.
No, go ahead, Mark.
You got it, Tony?
Well, I think offensive tackle. Right now, left tackle specifically is the key, and because if they can't, then you're talking about Donovan Jackson or Zen Mahalski, and
Yeah.
you're hoping handle it, not knowing if they can or not. And you'd like to have Donovan Jackson back at left guard for a second year so that he can be even better and grow from that. The experience will help him regardless of where he is. But if you can get one of these guys from out west, Washington State, that guy, name escaping me at the moment, but they are looking at those guys, and there's a ton of experience out there. And if you can get one of those guys, that would be, I think, the key. Getting Carter is, he's a versatile guy who could end up pretty much any of the three safety spots, depending on what they need. So I think that was big. I don't have there's this idea that anybody in the portal is better than who you got. And when you're at Ohio State, that's just not the case. And just somebody new doesn't mean it's better. And they have been selected when they bring in that somebody eventually starts. And so that's what they're looking for. They're looking for starters. Although I do think they could end up looking for some depth at both offensive line and in the secondary.
Yeah, I think they've got the is it Jarrett Kingston? Is that
Yes, that sounds right.
the Washington State kid? Certainly that would be a guy you would take. I need to doesn't he need to visit? I mean, are you going to get a kid from Washington State just flying across the country sight unseen? The one that's kind of interesting to me is Walter Rouse from Stanford. The problem with him is he had a season-ending injury. He's got a surgery, so he's not going to be available for spring football. And while that in itself I don't think is super important, because I don't think Jonah Jackson transfer after spring ball?
Yes,
I think
he was like a June arrival. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so like I don't think it's so much that as it is, are you going to be healthy? Like, are we going to take you in May and then you don't ever play or you're not the same player? So I think that is more so is the medical component of this. How sharp is he going to be? More so than he's going to miss spring ball. But that one's interesting to me. That was a kid they recruited out of high school, and he's done a good job at Stanford. So that's interesting to me. They addressed in my opinion, the biggest need, which was safety. They needed they needed a starter quality guy, but they also, even from a depth perspective, they don't have the bodies right now. That was my biggest thing. I know everyone's saying corner, and now maybe with Ja'Kalen Johnson transferring, that changes things a little bit. But at the end of the day, like, you have this super recruit in Jordan Hancock that you've been waiting to be healthy for an offseason of health. You have Denzel Burke, essentially a 3-year starter back. You have these young guys coming in. Jair Brown was actually not bad when he got his opportunities this year.
He was pretty good for a true freshman.
Getting thrown in the fire. Like, I really thought safety was a much more immediate concern than corner. Again, maybe that changes now. I don't know. If you go into the portal now, I mean, are you going to get a guy who's better than what you have? I don't know. I think a lot of people think, well, he started at this middling Power 5 program for the last 2 years, so just because. And I don't like Denzel Burke, so he's going to come in and I was like,
grass is always greener.
Hate to tell you, if Denzel Burke played at 6-6 Power 5 school X, Denzel Burke would look like one of their best players too.
Well, I saw a corner from BG in the portal, and I saw him play once, and he looked back for the ball. So,
really, you serious, Clark?
No.
Yeah. Before we get to Silver Bullet, a very generous super chat. I still kind of would like to see if it's the right guy at corner for sure. 1 to 2. This kitten is so bad. 1 to 2 tackles potentially. What about tight end? Everybody wants to talk about tight end. I think a lot of that depends on Kate Stover's decision. Where do things stand? People are going to question, well, what's G. Scott's next move? I mean, we haven't really heard a lot about Sam Hart. I mean, Bennett Christian went through his redshirt season. Where do they really stand there? I mean, a player that I think was really underappreciated was Mitch Rossi, through everything that Mitch Rossi did through his career as somebody who was just kind of a throw-in when they went to Franklin, Tennessee, and landed the Ray brothers, or at least one of the Ray brothers at that point. I'm just not sure what's going on there, but I was looking at somebody's scholarship chart and doing a count and taking the departed guys already out, and I think that they're technically, not everybody's in, so don't freak out about them being over 85, but they're at 91 with, I think it's like about 6 people who still have decisions to make on that last floating year. So they're technically at 85, but I don't think there's anybody around who doesn't think that Ohio State's done seeing players jump into the portal with some guys who have gone through 3 years and haven't necessarily made the move into the 2 deep.
Yeah, all they need to do is read our pre-written stories to find out how many more players are going to hit the portal.
I'm not done with those yet.
To the tight end point, like, there's no question they've wanted one. So we kind of have to separate, opinion from reality here. They undoubtedly have wanted to add a tight end to this roster. They tried last year. They tried this year. So I think it would seem to me I don't know that they want to ever go back to the amount of 12 personnel they used a couple of years ago, when it seemed like that was almost their base formation. But it feels like they want to have the flexibility to maybe go a little more 12 personnel, 2 tight ends. And they don't, for whatever reason this year, they didn't really have the bodies that made sense to do that. Now, is the answer just Joe Royer adds another 15 pounds? Is the answer, God, I like Jelani Thurman. Again, but he's 15, 20 pounds away, and he's got to learn how to block. So could they get away with what they have? I think they could. I think they have 2 or 3 guys, Royer, Thurman, Bennett Christian, that physically will make a transformation in another 6 months that could maybe get them to that point. So I wouldn't personally reach for one at this point. But it seems clear that they're interested in adding one.
And they have been for a couple of years.
They would have gotten C.J. Dupree, who ended up going to Alabama, but I'm not convinced that they completely went all in there. I mean, he looked good against Ohio State, and again, is that a case of, was it that C.J. Dupree just was that great, or Ohio State just didn't have a great plan for him? So I don't know.
Yeah, and I just, again, this isn't about, everyone talks about, hurting feelings. They get mad that Ohio State's afraid to hurt feelings. I don't think it's about hurting feelings, but you damn well better get a player who's better than what you have, or it's a nightmare if you don't. If it's just another guy in the mix, it's a nightmare. He better either be like of the highest character imaginable, like a Chip Trainum type of kid, or he better be like significantly better than what you have, or it's just not going to work.
Well, let me tell you about a story of a Big Ten team that brought in some transfers, and those players came in with NIL promises. So then other players on the team, their NIL had to be boosted to keep problems from happening in the locker room. So that is also another thing that gets factored in when if you're in an arms race type of thing, or an auction type of situation. When you're paying for these guys, then they come in and everybody knows that they're making more, and so then the rest of the locker room is like, well, what about us? And you're always recruiting your own locker rooms, and if you want to keep them that way, and you've built something over time, and it's not necessarily about upsetting feelings. It's about the market. and you don't want to upset the market, and you've got to keep the market straight. And it's just one more thing for college coaches to have to deal with.
Absolutely. Let's get to the super chat that's been up here for a little bit. Kevin, nice outfit. Is that from the Giorgio Armani truck stop collection? For all three scribes, who will be QB1 next year? For your information, Kevin, I just called Animal Protection Services. I can assure you the cat called me a bad name. So I was just defending myself.
There was a bit of a toss there, it looks like.
It was because I got clawed somewhere, and it was just more of a, you're free. Get out of my lap. I don't need you guys fighting in my lap. The hat is from Bucky's, obviously. The greatest, and it is not a truck stop. Trucks are not allowed. Mark has been to Bucky's. I think Tony finally got to see the greatness of Bucky's on the drive back from Atlanta and to Atlanta. Mm-hmm. And no, I'm not classy enough for the Giorgio Armani truck stop collection. I'm much more about the Walmart truck stop collection. I'm just here so I don't get fined. But who will be QB1 next year? And that is a $1 million question. I think we all we all have our opinions. They may be right, they might be wrong, but what say you guys? Because Kyle McCord and Devin Brown certainly seem to be the front runners. I think it's going to be a big ask for somebody like Lincoln Keenholz to come in day one and suddenly be that guy. So let's just leave him out of the conversation for now, just because that just seems to be the right thing. But Brown or McCord?
Yeah, I'm going to go with Kyle McCord until I see Devin Brown overtake him in camp, because he's got the most experience. I love Devin Brown's ability to run. I think everybody does, and it's a lot of that is because the inability or the lack of running that CJ Stroud did in his career. Everybody wants to just rebound way the other way on this, and so that's why I think a lot of people like Devin Brown, but I also really like Devin Brown's competitiveness, and so does Ryan Day, but I'm going to go with the experience. The good thing is Devin Brown has now had a year in the system, and now he's actually going to be able to compete for a job, and so is Kyle McCord. So you're going to get both of the competitive juices flowing on those guys, and it doesn't mean we're going to find out until, I don't know, Mark, maybe September something. Yeah, in terms of who is going to be starting, but I'm going to take McCord for now. I think he's the betting favorite.
Yeah, I would actually agree with that. Well, God, when's the opener? September 2nd?
I will look that up.
Sounds about right. Anyway, I would say roughly maybe like 72 to 96 hours before kickoff.
September 2nd.
Again, they're playing at Indiana, right?
Mm-hmm.
Look, Ty is going to go to McCord because of his experience and because of roster management, we'll call it. The moment you pass an older quarterback with a younger quarterback on your roster, you have to make that decision. And I'm not saying Kyle would 100% transfer, but I'm saying when you make that decision, you have to make it with the thought that your older guy is going to transfer. Because you run that risk. You very much run that risk. So Kyle's going to get a tie. If it's, look, who's got more chemistry with what the receiving core is going to be next year? It's Kyle. Those are he's been playing with Marvin for forever, but he came in with a Mecca. I'm sure he's gotten plenty of work in with Julian Fleming over the past couple of years since Julian was kind of new to the lineup this year. So there's going to be, those guys have probably thrown thousands of passes together
Jaden
by
Beller
now.
too.
Yeah. So I think he's got a built-in advantage. Here's the thing I don't think people maybe understand about Kyle, and he's not going to be confused with Justin Fields, but he's actually a very willing runner. He ran, I saw him play, I think at least twice, maybe 3 times in high school, and he would tuck it and he would run. He's a very willing runner. I think we saw it in the Akron game. And it's not always going to be flashy. In fact, he's more so. You're going to want him in the pocket more, but he's not unwilling to take the free yardage, and he's not unwilling to kind of run that zone read. He's not unwilling to put his shoulder down. He's kind of a more physical runner than obviously more so than CJ, but even more so than Fields. I think Fields was obviously kind of that electric, take it 70 yards type of runner. And, you kind of held your breath every time he had to put a shoulder down, but Kyle's like a beast. I mean, Kyle's like 6'3", 225, 230. Like, he's a tank.
Well, I guess I will be the dissenter here, and I'm going to say Devin Brown. And it has nothing to do with, Kyle couldn't do this or Kyle couldn't do that. I've just talked to some people that seem to think that Devin offers, I agree 100% in the fact that if you go with the younger guy, you darn well better be sure, because it's hard to go back from a bunch of alpha dudes that all want to be the starter, and you're like, we're going to take him. And then, but you just you wait, your turn's coming too. But I just keep hearing Devin Brown's name mentioned more and more, and I don't know. I mean, I could come up with 50 good reasons of why it should be Kyle McCord. I can come up with one reason that's different, because that it's going to be Devin Brown, and that reason is people keep mentioning that name to me. So maybe that's not my pick. Maybe that's just the pick of the people who I talk to. But for the sake of just being a little bit different, I'm going to say Devin Brown.
Well, Kevin, Devin Brown, as of like what? Sorry, guys. I know this is a little too soon, but as of like Sunday morning, Devin Brown was QB2. So everyone loves Devin Brown right now. So that's why you're hearing. That's why you're hearing Devin Brown QB2
over
right
the
now.
dude that they haven't seen.
The best QB2, as we know, is the best player on Ohio State's roster every year.
I think they're, Mark, you're saying if they're even, then it's McCord. I think there's also an argument to be made. If they're even, you go with the guy who will stay for another 2 years. And if
that club control,
right, that sort of thing. But that would also require you better get in that portal and find a backup, unless you think Lincoln Keenholz can do it, because you're going to be down. I'm not pushing somebody out, but Kyle McCord is stuck around to start at Ohio State. And so if you take that opportunity away from him, or if he does not win that job, what are the chances he's going to win it in 2024? And, I think they know that Ohio State knows that if they make that decision, then it's going to be more than just picking a starter. You've now completely rearranged your quarterback room, but you also owe it to your team to go with the best guy. And the added benefit is that you'll have him in 2024 as well. And then, because I think right now you can't expect somebody to return at quarterback as a starter unless they have eligibility. Like, if they can leave, you have to expect them to leave, because the numbers that they're going to put up, the pedigree, the recruiting that Ohio State has done, all of these guys have an eye on the NFL, and they should, because right now Ryan Day, all he does is produces first-round NFL quarterbacks. And so, like Kyle McCord, you would expect if he starts, he's going to throw for 4,000 yards, 40 touchdowns. That's what everybody does at Ohio State now. And then you go. And then Devin Brown will do it, and he will have a year as well of starting, and then he'll go. All of these, like, you're only going to get 1 year out of all of these guys because of the way things are set up. But, I guess there are worse things and worse cards to be dealt than guys who are NFL quarterbacks every year, even though they're separate guys.
But yeah. Mark, how successful are quarterbacks who have 1 year of starting in the NFL?
Exactly.
You were reading my mind. I was going to say, I would hope Kyle would get some advice. I mean, like, look, his dad played quarterback at Rutgers. I think Kyle's got good insulation around him. I would hope if he won the job and had a great year, that a lot of people would sit him down and be like, look, Kyle, this is what happens to 1 year starters in the NFL. It ain't good. And since we're in a brave new world now, if Kyle McCord, you flipped my tie goes to Kyle thing around on me, I'm going to flip this around on you. If Kyle McCord wins the job and throws for 40 touchdowns next year, how much money do you think he's going to get in NIL if he stays another year?
2 to 3 million.
Probably the $2.5 million plus that
Ohio State
CJ Stroud allegedly got this year. So there's going to be, is that top 5 NFL draft pick money? No, but if you could tell Kyle, like, look, you're going to greatly enhance your chances of being a successful NFL quarterback and getting the second contract, which is by far the biggest one now with the rookie cap that the NFL has. And oh, by the way, we're going to put, you're going to get a couple $1 million in your bank account while you sit here and don't have to pay for food or anything or housing or anything for the next year.
Rookie dinners.
Yeah, exactly. And we're going to do the Kyle McCord Heisman campaign and, everything else. So I think, I don't think it's as black and white that he would just bolt. I think NIL now with quarterbacks, if you look at some of these lists that are out there, these top quarterbacks coming into the year, we're getting $2-3 million. And so if that seems to be the going rate for a returning starting quarterback at a top 5 or 10 program.
The real question is if Kyle McCord does this and throws for 4,000 yards and 40 touchdowns, what can he get from Tennessee or USC? And that's when you really know NIL has come home to roost for Ohio State. And that now this is really when things are going to negatively affect Ohio State, but we obviously haven't seen that yet. But no, you're right. I mean, that's plenty of reason to stay and get that second year as a starter because it is significant. You're looking, Justin Fields got his 1.5 years basically of starting, and that's helping him. Dwayne Haskins didn't have that, and you saw the results as he tried to be a starting NFL quarterback. The more you get in college, the better you're going to do. And there are reasons to stick around now because, I don't know what he'd probably rookie contract, say you're a top, you drafted at number 22 or something like Kenny Pickett. I think you're probably making as much in college at that $3 million range.
It's close enough to justify the risk of coming back to improve that position and improve your likelihood of success. The only other thing I would add to all this is the one thing I will say in favor of Devin Brown is if Devin Brown legitimately beats out Kyle McCord, that's probably saying more about Devin Brown and how good he is. And so that's probably not as disastrous as that might sound when you first hear, oh, Devin Brown's going to beat out Kyle McCord. Like, that would probably mean Devin Brown's pretty special.
Remember, just a year ago in San Antonio, we were watching Devin Brown throw the ball around. We were talking to Devin Brown's dad, who, typical quarterback dad, his son could walk on water and everything, but the kid delivered. He was really good in stretches. I mean, he certainly had some throws he'd like to have back, but I was kind of replaying that all in my mind as we were kind of talking about the situation and just, how short these time periods are.
In terms of Kenny Pickett, $2.5 million this year as a rookie, drafted number 20 overall. So just give you an idea, CJ Stroud made that
signing bonus in there too, and all that nonsense.
That's including the signing bonus.
It is including signing.
Wow. Yeah, just prorated because it was a $14 million year or $14 million contract over 4 years. Mm-hmm. Obviously, you'll probably pick up that 5th year, but right in line there, and that's something that schools can do, and they can meet that. And if you have an opportunity to save and keep a starting quarterback, you try to do that as if you can. Now, CJ Stroud, 2 years as a starter, he's going to make top 10 money. He's going to go, I assume. And at this point, if he comes back, then
he hasn't announced, has he?
He hasn't officially announced at this point. We're all well beyond that. It's like, well, we're talking about the next thing.
Yeah.
CJ hasn't announced. I've had to correct myself a couple of times in posts and things and saying CJ Stroud is assuredly not coming back. But what a fun problem to have.
Well, I think I asked in one of my group texts today, if Tommy Eichenberg decides to stay or go, is he going to announce anything on social media, or will he just show up for spring camp or NFL? Like, just his name will appear in an end.
He's going to grunt at a slightly higher pitch.
If
grunt once for college,
forest, nobody's around, what does the grunt sound like? Well, Silver Bullet, thank you for the super chat. Jordan
Mm.
Kapler weighs in with a super chat of his own. With having a relatively young roster again next year, I'd really like to see second and third team play significant roles. I feel like lack of depth in all positions really impacted Ohio State. Yeah, I
Mark,
mean,
can you play second and third team when you have a young roster and you're trying to win games? I think that's what makes it difficult.
Yeah, I mean, I would have liked, people I've seen in the chat, people like, Ryan Day wouldn't let Kyle McCord throw it, and I don't think that I wouldn't read into that as far as what Ryan Day thinks of Kyle McCord. I just think that's how they do it at that point. I would like to see them get starters out of games earlier than they have. Will they have that luxury next year? I don't know. I think their margin for error next year is going to be a little smaller. But yeah, I think that's something moving forward. I'd like to see them kind of change their philosophy on how early they get some of these guys in. Not so much even that, what they do when they get in there. Let Kyle McCord lead a drive. I don't understand why you would bring him in there and then just totally handcuff him. I think you want to let these guys kind of run the offense or whatever when you get in there, or bring in a freshman. Yeah, run a blitz. You don't have to play base defense if you have your third stringers in there. So I'd like to see kind of more of that. That being said, I thought their depth was tested as much as it probably could be this year. I think there's areas where their depth bailed them out. I mean, how many running backs they use this year? How many? They're down to your
all
third
of them
receiver
that were healthy.
You started 4 running backs, you started 5 corners, you started 4 safeties, 6 offensive linemen, maybe 7 offensive linemen with Enoch in for Matt Jones, so 7 offensive linemen. So they were put through the ringer in a lot of those, and Evan Pryor would have started at some point if he had been healthy, but he wasn't. But I talked to Tim Walton before the game, and I was like, did you ever expect you'd be starting 5 cornerbacks this year? And he's like, nobody can expect that. You just have to prepare and hope that you don't, but get everybody ready in case you do. And those guys have been so banged up and you never knew who was going to play from week to week. So I don't know that you can really be too harsh on those guys for next year. I keep going back to Marshawn Lattimore was banged up for his first 2 years and was spotty as a nickel back at times as a redshirt freshman, redshirt sophomore. Boom, he's the best player, one of the best players in the country. Garyon Conley is a redshirt freshman against Michigan State in 2014. They couldn't get him out of the field, off the field fast enough, and brought back in an injured Eli Apple to play defense. So those first 2 years can be kind of tough on a lot of guys.
Yeah,
I mean, it feels like at times though that I'm a big proponent of you want to sit there and play your starters the first half and maybe a series or two in the second half. See what it looks like when you make adjustments, when the opposing team makes adjustments, and then you kind of go from there. I mean, obviously, they were trying to put C.J. Stroud in a position to win a Heisman. And up until the Michigan game, I mean, I was booked to go to New York. We had plans in place. We had a couple of different levels of how we were going to cover the event. And then the Michigan game happened. And while Stroud didn't necessarily have a putrid game, it felt like all momentum was lost. And we didn't end up going to New York at that point. I mean, at this point, if you have a lot of young guys, you know what young guys haven't done? They haven't played a lot of football. So you need to sit there and get them experience. But how do you get them experience while getting the guys behind them experience when the guys who have been declared starters are not getting that experience? So it's a very tricky situation. I'm gonna pull the pin and walk out on this one. Maybe Ryan Day, the CEO head coach, versus Ryan Day, the OC, might be able to figure all this out.
I really liked how Jim Tressel would send in the second team offensive line in the first half of games. And I remember him doing that against Texas in 2006, and they drove down. It was the first half. He threw out the second team offensive line, and they drove down the field and scored a touchdown. And that was just one of those things. I don't know that Ohio State needs to go to that extreme now, but like they were worried about building for the season as well as winning that game. And if you've got a coach like Jim Bowman, you can do both. I guess is what I'm saying.
Adam,
Yeah,
don't go changing. Don't go changing, Adam.
Let's move on. No, I would like to see them kind of change philosophies on that. But the problem now becomes, again, younger team next year. I think smaller margin for error. I think tougher schedule. Did they kind of maybe miss some opportunities this year to get some of the guys we're going to be talking about next year more meaningful snaps at certain positions? It certainly felt at times during the middle of the season like they were all in on a CJ Stroud Heisman campaign versus getting Kyle McCord an extra series or two. I guess you can argue that any way you want, what that would have meant maybe to have a Heisman Trophy winning quarterback. And, so, I mean, that's kind of a philosophical debate there. But yeah, I'd like to see more meaningful opportunities at certain times. I just don't know if next year is going to be the year where those opportunities present themselves beyond obviously what Youngstown State in there and Western Kentucky, although Western Kentucky is kind of a fascinating opponent, but the offensive numbers that programs put up the last few years.
Mm-hmm.
Brian DeGroff picking up on my comment there about the comments that I guess Ryan Day made to Kirk Herbstreit in production meetings about potentially relinquishing play calling duties. Thoughts on that? I mean, obviously that is some huge news. I mean, I replay this season where people were kind of getting sick and tired of Ryan Day, the play caller. I think kind of in the Michigan game, some of the places where things bogged down. He says, to hell with it, throws it all in the Georgia game. They mess around and almost win the game. And now he's going to back off of the play calling duties. Can you see Ryan Day as a true CEO type of head coach, or are we just are we buying into the wrestling story here?
I think he's always going to be involved. He's evaluating everything, and so that's one of the things you evaluate. And the way they have suffered in terms of game situation and special teams and all of these things that maybe he would have more time for if he wasn't focused on getting plays from ideas from Kevin Wilson during when the drive is over and they're all conversing about what they're going to do next. Like, if he's not necessarily focused entirely on that and has time to look at other stuff, maybe they wouldn't have 12 guys on punt team, and maybe they wouldn't have this or that, and wouldn't have these delays.
Special teams coordinator.
I was just going to say that special teams coach, right?
Well, and here's the thing: like, if you want to get rid of that, having a head coach who's no longer calling plays, he'll have more time to do stuff like that. Because Urban Meyer was a special teams guy when he was a head coach. Other head coaches have been special teams guys, so maybe that frees him up. But I don't think they're going to get anybody calling plays better than Ryan Day, and I think he's the best player caller in Ohio State football history. But at some point, it's a really difficult job to do. And so if the net positive is that everything else runs smoothly and your play calling only takes a little dip, because it's not going to go, like, the offense is not going to go away. I don't think the system is there and it's going to continue on. And if somebody else is calling the plays, the dynamic of who would be doing that, I think, is fascinating. And it's going to get back to one of those things where we would never get an answer from Jim Tressel. It's like, is it Daryl Hazel? Is it Jim Ballman? Is it Jim Tressel? You'll never get an answer. Is it Justin Fry? Is it Brian Hartline? Is it Tony Alford? Like, you're never going to find out, and we'll probably never stop asking.
Yeah, I think this presents its own questions and issues if he does give up play calling. I don't think it's as simple as everything will immediately get better. I think, I mean, there's been some games I've criticized his play calling. I thought I got my infamous first half Northwestern Big Ten championship game tweet of every time Ryan Day refuses to run the football is coaching malpractice. I think, was one example, but he's also had some very brilliant games as play caller. I think he just had one this past weekend. So it's going to be interesting to me. Yeah. it's gonna have to be someone he's in kind of total alignment with, I think. And so who's that going to be?
Can you go out of house? I mean, I don't think you can. But can you go out of house? People are sitting here naming names. I want Joe Moorhead or the Texas Tech coordinator. I mean, I've seen some other names. I mean, when you bring in Justin Fry, and there seems to be some reports in there that something about play calling was maybe inferred in that deal. I mean, you sit there and you're trying to hold off the entire world from poaching Brian Hartline, who has not called plays before. But does Ryan Day take the chance of bringing in somebody larger than him that's going to suck all the oxygen out of the room in terms of a play caller? I mean, you're not going to get away from your offense. I mean, hell, he brought in Kerry Combs to run like the one defense that Kerry Combs had never run before. So I don't think he's going to bring in a play caller to completely change offensive philosophies.
Yeah, man. So zone 6, I think co-coordinator is the way it goes. I would need maybe some context to that because I've seen co-coordinators be a bit of a disaster before. But I think at some point, I don't know if it's going to be this year or not, but at some point, you are going to have to give Brian Hartline some added responsibility. It's just the natural evolution of his coaching career. He may not be a guy who's just trying to climb the ladder. I get that. But at some point, I think he's probably going to need to be involved in play calling. Is it too soon? I mean, it's a risk. It's a risk. It's a risky decision. But here's the thing with Brian Hartline. Every kind of opportunity he's had has kind of been risky for the people taking the chance on him or whatever. And he's done nothing but nail every opportunity he's been given all the way back since he was like a 3-star recruit who suffered a pretty catastrophic leg injury and Ohio State honored his scholarship. So like he has not failed yet at anything he's tried to do. And so maybe that's the answer. And I think him and Day would be probably more philosophically aligned than either an outside guy or even someone like Justin Fry. But it's going to be an interesting offseason debate. And it's going to be interesting to see in spring ball when, we get to see a little bit of them and we're start asking questions like, oh, so who's doing this? What's going on here? I think it's an important decision though, because good, leave well enough alone. I mean, you could maybe your game management gets better and maybe this is a net positive. It could also be a net negative. It could also be Warner Beck 2.0 if you bring in someone that doesn't fit and your offense is a nightmare. Like there is downside to him doing this. Like I feel like some people are like, oh, it's only could be positive for him to do this. I'm like, no, it really, anytime you make a change, it can go one of two ways.
Well, and that change was one of those things where Urban felt like he owed it to Warner. Like Warner had been around long enough.
Yes.
And he had been there as a co-coordinator. So Tom Herman goes and it's okay. Now it's your turn. And yeah, it did not go well. And this is, it was almost like he had no choice. He had complete choice, but this was the logical, this was the move that
he painted himself in the corner.
Right. And so now is Day doing that same thing, but it's football. Like, well, do you want to keep your coaches? Who do you want to keep most? Because you're going to have to do something to keep them. And that this is just the natural progression of thing. Okay, now you call plays. And then eventually that guy goes and is a head coach somewhere else. Now somebody else is going to call plays. And it's the guy that you don't want to lose just yet. And, that's how they climb the ladder. And this is the next rung for somebody.
I'm calling my own number here with an audible. This isn't necessarily an Ohio State question. It's Ohio State adjacent. How much heat do you think Lincoln Riley is feeling right now in terms of where the USC defense is with former Ohio State defensive assistant Alex Grinch and what happened there against Tulane in a game that I turned off 6 different times only to keep coming back and caught all the good parts?
Yeah, I mean, that's If there's one, I mean, it's hard to believe that there's a school out there that is having more defensive issues and probably an angrier even fan base about their defense than Ohio State. But I mean, that is they should be absolutely prolific on offense next year. Like they should be scoring like 50. They especially with that conference. I mean, 50 points a game next year is possible. It's going to be 40, 45 anyway. I mean,
they've already gotten some studs in the portal to make up for some of the guys they're losing. I mean,
if you don't make the playoffs with that offense and Caleb Williams got like, if your defense like that is, yeah, you hope he's not holding them hostage where he's like afraid to, make a change or, I got people saying, oh, he doesn't care about defense. And he's, I don't know if that's true, but
he probably cares about winning and he's not going to win with that defense right now.
I don't think Riley gets the kind of criticism that he should because of his defenses. Like Ryan Day and Ohio State get criticized for lack of defense. Lincoln Riley is shiny, and he does not. You don't see that kind of criticism for him. I think it's because there's not as much pressure because he's at USC or Oklahoma, and I bet he would get more pressure at Oklahoma than he did at USC. But Oklahoma, it's like the Big 12 thing is baked in. It's like, well, you can't expect to have a good defense in the Big 12. And then you're out at USC. It's like, well, you can't expect to care about stuff at USC. You just do what you do, and eventually it'll all work out. I saw I sent it in our group text, prominent college football Twitter account. I'll just read it to you. I feel bad for Alex Grinch in all of this. He didn't want to go to USC in the first place, but he couldn't stay at OU thanks to Riley. Now this season set his career back even more. Nobody has set Alex Grinch's career back. Nobody has set Alex Grinch's career back more than Alex Grinch, but it doesn't matter because he just continues to move forward.
Screw threat.
This is the LA screw job then basically, because he continues to have defenses that get lit up, and he continues to he's climbing the ladder. And we saw it before the season. We saw his name and during the season mentioned as head coaching candidate at places. Like I don't know. I remember talking with him at Ohio State. He was introduced. He was a future head coach at some point, and I remember thinking the next head coach at Ohio State is either going to be Alex Grinch or Ryan Day, and that's how they both operated, and they both wanted that kind of control. But you can't get that kind of control when you also have Greg Schiano there. But when he's at his own defense, I mean, with legitimate players, they have not done nearly what they should, and in fact have done worse than they probably would with some other defensive coordinator.
The comment here: if Day lost to Tulane, he would have to deactivate all the social medias. I'm going to say even more. If Ohio State lost to Tulane under Ryan Day would have to delete himself from society because people would be merciless about that. I mean, I don't know. I mean, the nice thing about LA is you've got all these other sports. You got the beach, you got the mountains, everything else. I think people move on a little quicker there. I wouldn't want to imagine what would happen if Ohio State choked against Tulane. Again, proving why there is absolutely nothing to gain getting stuck in that New Year's Six game against the Group of Five team. I would take a pass. I would be like, take your $400 gift certificate, Best Buy shopping suite, whatever. We ain't going. There's nothing to gain here.
You do the Jim Harbaugh, we got COVID. Yeah. So, that would be, Kevin, you're suggesting you do the Jim Harbaugh, we've got COVID, we're not coming to Columbus thing?
Wow. Those are your words, not mine. I've already been called sanctimonious on another show we've done, so I have to be very careful with what I'm saying. So, yes, I do read your comments, but I don't delete them because I'm not thin-skinned. I'm not saying you, just in general. Let's get back into our questions here. Can we expect to see CJ Hicks and Sonny Styles starting this year? Where are Steel Chambers and Tommy Eichenberg going? Do we have a final decision on either of these guys? Steel said he was coming back, I thought. Right. And Tommy just grunted, which we haven't deciphered. So starting, no, but certainly would like to see, I would certainly like to see CJ get some run. We're not really talking a lot about Gabe Powers with where he is, and obviously Sonny is still a safety, and we saw Sonny play a good amount in the Peach Bowl.
Yeah, I think Sonny will start somewhere. I think they'll figure a way to get him in the starting 11. Yeah, I don't think CJ's going to start. I think both the linebackers are probably going to be back, and I'm like, even if Tommy left, I don't know that everyone's probably going to hate me for saying this, but I think if Tommy leaves, I think you're just bumping Cody Simon into the lineup at Mike. I don't think you're playing Hicks and Chambers together, would be my guess. But I do think it's important that if that's how this plays out, if Tommy and Steele are both back, that it's important to get CJ Hicks playing time next year. I mean, I just, because at that point, either you're going to lose your top 3 linebackers one way or the other, because maybe Cody transfers at that point, or maybe not. But even if he doesn't, I mean, I don't think he's got any eligibility left after next year. So you need to make sure in preparations of 2024 that CJ Hicks is getting playing time. That being said, I still am of the belief that Sonny is going to be a linebacker eventually, but maybe that's a more gradual transition that we see happen over the course of the next 12 months into 2024.
I think I'm interested to see what he becomes, because I think we've talked about him as like a positionless player. You just put him over here and have him do different things. And when I talked to him last week, I was like, so Sonny, what do you think about the people who don't think you can play safety? Not that you won't, but that you can. And he's like, the coaches think I can. I think I can. But even when we saw him against Georgia, it's more of a in the box run game, like third linebacker type of thing. So I don't know what that means for him. I think he can certainly be Pete Warner, as the bullet, where he's in the box, but he's also now he's the center fielder, that sort of thing. I think he starts somewhere next year. I would probably put him at strong safety, and then you've got Jihad Carter maybe at the nickel, because he played quite a bit of that at Syracuse, and then I'm guessing Lathan Ransom as your free safety. I don't think Sonny can do the free safety thing, and Lathan doesn't want to do the nickel stuff anymore, and I don't know that you want him doing coverage anymore either. Can Kai Stokes get in there and make something? And Mark, I know there's also a question about Malik Hartford getting into the 2 deep there. What do you think?
Well, to be in the 2 deep, you basically have to be one of the top 6 safeties. Do they even have 6 safeties on the roster right now? I mean,
exactly. And he's not going to be in nickel. So
yeah. I just talked to Malik after practice today, so I'll have something on him at this point, probably tomorrow. But he's coming in ready. I mean, he's going to be here on Monday, and he's coming ready to play. I think he's mentality-wise very, very mature, but also very, like, he's one of those chip on his shoulder guys. Like, even when you talk to him, you can talk to him about like what he had for dinner, and he's still gonna like have this like rough like edge to him about it. Like, he's just always like, there's always like, he's just always kind of like, it looks like he's like one slip up away from being angry at you. Like, it just always like has this like.
Is he the baby face assassin? Because he just has this baby face. I just can't.
No, he's very serious. He's a very serious kid. And so I like his mentality. He's coming in. He's coming in to take a spot from somebody. He admitted to me today, kind of thing we've talked about with him for a while now is, he's going to need to put on about 10, 15 pounds. That shouldn't be difficult. But yeah, I actually do expect him on the 2 deep. And, I just kind of said the same thing about CJ Hicks that I'll say about Stokes is, I think even if he doesn't start, and I'm probably not expecting him to at this point, you have to get him some meaningful snaps next year. You have to get these guys snaps.
We'll get to Thomas's question in a second. I'm not going to punch it up because I don't want to lose Thomas's question, but AW a little concerned about Luke Montgomery, talking about him getting pushed around. I mean, and we talked about Luke earlier in the show. Outside of the Keon Keeley play, was he getting pushed around? I mean, because as Mark said in the beginning of the show, Keon Keeley is pushing everybody around. This isn't a case of, oh, Luke, you're failing. This is, oh my Lord, Keon Keeley is really tearing this event up.
Yeah, I thought Luke was good today at practice. I saw him in the joint practice in the afternoon. He was winning his one-on-one reps. He was doing well in pass protection in 11-on-11. He was pushing the pile a little bit in the run game. I have no concerns about Luke long-term beyond the fact that I would never, ever, ever expect to get anything out of a true freshman offensive lineman. So I'm not penciling him into the rotation next year. I would never do that really to anyone. I didn't even do it for Paris Johnson, who's maybe the freakiest O-tackle prospect I've seen, certainly from Ohio. So I'm not concerned about Luke. I think for me, the only question is he quite long enough to play on the perimeter? And so I think worst case scenario is he's a multi-year starter at guard, which he's playing right guard this week and with a little bit of right tackle as well. So the Keeley thing, again, I can't emphasize this enough. Keeley has been obliterated. There was a series today in this inter-squad practice. It was a 3-and-out, and I don't think Keeley was hardly touched on all three. Like all three plays, he just ran around. He just ran through and around the right tackle that was out there. And I'm just like, I'm watching this, and I'm like, I don't know how the West is going to win on Saturday if they can't even get a hand on this guy. Like, it's been such a nightmare to block him this week. So I don't really blame Luke for that rep, as bad as it looked. He's been very solid the rest of the week, other than, again, that incident with Keeley.
So remember that when you're watching Lincoln Keenholz run for his life.
Oh my God! Why is he having to run so much? Well, yeah. Roll the pocket and pray.
You wanted a quarterback who would run. Now you got
maybe he'll get in there, line it up nicely. I mean, he's kind of been the third quarterback taking reps this week, so that might line him up nicely to not be out there when Keeley's out there. Maybe he'll get the back end rotation of the D line.
David Greenshield, I see your super chat. We'll get to it in a second, but I made the mistake of taking the star off of this one. I can't lose it. Thomas Kirkpatrick, major concern, Ohio State recruiting will suffer significantly when going after 5 stars due to not having a competitive upfront NIL strategy. Everyone may not like it, but it is becoming the norm. The giant question about, do you get into the game of paying upfront for these players more so than you produce on the field? The car deal will come. The deals with, local industries will come, and you will get there. As the CJ Strouds of the world at Ohio State were very well compensated under the structure of NIL.
Yeah, this is a hard question to answer in like a single soundbite. As I always start these things off with, it is important to be competitive in NIL. What that actually looks like in practice is up for debate. Texas A&M is a disaster right now over not only their actual spending, but their rumored spending. And I'll go more into that probably on the site here this week. But there was a number thrown around that Texas A&M spent like $30 million. That ain't true. And so while they are a big spender in NIL, it wasn't $30 million. And that rumor has caused as much harm to them as the actual philosophy they've had of doing this upfront stuff. Now every kid that comes to Texas A&M, like they sit down like, yeah, 30 million, what's my cut of that if I come here? And it's like, whoa, wait a minute, 30 million? Like, no, it wasn't 30 million. So there are a lot of ways to address this. I'll try and condense this because I could ramble about this for a while. These programs are going to have to start operating kind of like a professional sports front office with a salary cap would. There are going to be some tough decisions. So even if you have the money, you have unlimited money, you can't allow a couple of players to hold you hostage for 5 or 6. What if the number one running back in the country says, well, I'm going to come here, but I need $5 million. You're going to have to make some value decisions there on, is there any running back that we've ever scouted in the high school level that is worth this big a piece of the pie? And oh, by the way, the minute it gets out there that this kid got $5 million, Trevion Henderson wants $5.5 million, or he's in the portal. So now you're paying $10.5 million for running backs from your, whatever your pool of money is. So there are a lot of decisions here that have to be made. So there's a decision of, okay, we need to get as much money as we can. That's obvious. But now it's how do we even deploy this? You can't just pay more than everyone else is paying for every player on your roster. That's not sustainable.
That'd make you the Mets.
Like, you can't just do that. So you're going to have to, even if you get to the point where you're comfortable with the amount of money these collectives have, you're going to have to make decisions like, okay, this kid's unreasonable. Like, we're not paying you $5 million. You're 18 years old. Like, you're a kicker and we're stretching, but like, to quote Kerry Combs, but, so it's just so complicated. I'll say this. I'll just wrap it up with this. Talk to Brandon Innes and Carnell Tate. I'm actually writing a story about this for this week. Brandon Innes was a little more in depth about this than Carnell was, but Carnell kind of said the same thing, just in fewer words. They sat Brandon down and they showed him like, hey, this is what Marvin's getting in NIL. This is what Jackson got this year in NIL. Talked a little bit about like Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson, because I think they were at the very end of it, were able to strike some deals while it was still. And then, of course, the rookie years they've had. And so Brandon kind of told me, like, look, all I have to do, first of all, there will be money there. I'm not getting $0 when I show up. I'm going to get something. They're just not, it's just not an inducement or whatever. So I know there's going to be opportunities available. And not only that, I know that if I show up and I do what I'm supposed to do, that the money that Jackson Smith and Jigba got, which is, again, reportedly low 7 figures this year, is going to be there for me. And that's more worth it to me than, maybe taking a number somewhere in between that Jackson's number and somewhere in between what I'm actually going to get that first year, splitting the difference at some other school where I might not get developed as well. And so they're going to have to recruit a certain type of kid. The kids who are just sitting there and saying, here's the money I'm being offered, this is the number you need to beat, I'm taking the highest, I'm going to go to the highest bidder. I don't think that's going to work for Ohio State. And I'm not sure it should, because I don't think we're seeing a lot of schools that are going to have actual success with that. But
I think the key for Ohio State, they don't need to go out and buy guys. They need to have money available for the guys who want to come to Ohio State but can't because they're getting offered more to go somewhere else. Like, for the guys that want to come to Ohio State, you might need something there for them, or you're going to continue to miss out on these recruits. They're not looking for money. They want to go to Ohio State, but it's really difficult to turn down something from another school when you need it and your family needs it. And so you go do that for a year, and then if you want to, then you go somewhere else. But Mark, I also want to ask, the losing out on these defensive ends, these 5-star guys, and I think that maybe that's what the original question was alluding to, Keon Keeley and Mateo Uiagalelei and Damon Wilson. We think of it as NIL, a lot of it, but would Ohio State have been able to win out if there weren't the constant rumors about Larry Johnson?
That's another thing that's constantly been a thorn on their side for quite a few years now, and it's starting to it gets worse every year, because every year it becomes more realistic. Every year he's a year older, and when he's 63, 64 years old. It's a bit of a tougher sell, I guess, mentally to these guys. Like, oh, he's only 63, 64. He's got 3 or 4 years left for me now. When you start to get in the ballpark of 70 or whatever it is he is now, that becomes less and less likely. And yes, I mean, that's 1000%. We've watched it not hurt recruiting in the past cycles, but it's delayed. All their guys last year were like just about end of the process. Let's make sure Larry's going to be here. Let's make sure, and then this year, again, it's, is Larry going to be there? And you're recruiting all the way into December for guys you maybe hoped you could get locked up in June. And that's certainly a factor too. I don't think there's any question about it. And it's becoming a thing where if he doesn't retire, I think they have to address this. And I don't know how. I have some ideas, I guess, but how you would do this in a way that, is within the rules, but you would really like to have a plan in place of like, yeah, he's going to retire soon. He may not be here your entire college career. But this is what our plan is. And I don't know how you'd have to I'll say it the PC way. You would have to reorganize your coaching staff in a way that would allow you to bring on a second defensive line coach for a year or two, and then Larry retires, and then you take Larry's open position and then you give that back to wherever you took it from, the first time around. But I think that's actually worth exploring if he's not retiring. But I have to say, I've had a pretty good pulse on Larry Johnson as far as like, will he, won't he retire over the years? There were a lot of rumors a couple of years ago. I kind of squashed those. Even last year when it was kind of really floating around, I said, I'm not so sure about this. This is the first year I'm like, oh man, this might be it.
Yeah, I don't disagree. We're about an hour 45. I think we'll probably try to cap this at 2 hours here at the top of the hour. So 13 minutes left. 3 hours. Okay, Tony, I'll step away for a minute. I got to go fight.
I'm on Central Time, so I got plenty of time.
I'm going to go fight with the cats. But I do want to hit this super chat from David Greenshield. Thank you for the super chat. Thank you, everybody, for the super chats. As you know, on all of our chats, the way to get to the front of the line, unless Tony has a lot to say, is to super chat. But we love all of our questions. How has the stud era hurt offensive line depth? Oh, let me count the ways.
Do I have to, Kevin, you want to start on that one?
I'll start with it. I'll take the bullet here. I don't care. They're
about time.
They've missed out on some guys. I mean, we haven't necessarily had the year where they only ended up with one offensive lineman being Evan Blankenship. We have to go back to his predecessor for that. But there certainly have been the years of where they've gone big game hunting and have struck out. And you need bodies. And maybe some of these guys haven't developed. It's too early to tell with some. Some of them, I think we have some ideas. I think we're going to see some offensive line movement in the portal coming up here soon. It's just the reality of what it is. I think it's important as Ohio State to have a very keen eye on the state of Ohio and be able to recruit the state of Ohio well. But I think there have been times where, let's just take St. Ed's as an example. St. Ed's always has dudes. I don't know if Ohio State has always targeted the right dude from St. Ed's. So I think there have been some issues from the stud era that have hurt Ohio State's offensive line recruiting depth. And, we saw Stud toward the end of his Ohio State tenure. He had the back surgery. He had all those issues. He wasn't getting out on the road. How costly was that? Hey, Greg, keep Jackson Carman in state. Keep Jackson Carman at Ohio State. Got it. Where does Jackson Carman go? Not Ohio State. Now, if you're a Bengals fan, you're probably like, well, that isn't that big of a deal. He sucks here anyway. But, when you have this is your main job and then everything else is all gravy and you screw up the main course, that's a problem.
Yeah, I mean, this is the recruiting angle that, everyone flips out on signing day about misses or they overreact to makes. And, this feeling of, oh, we didn't get enough corners. Our secondary is going to suck next year. We didn't, or we got these great receivers. Our receiving core is going to be amazing this year. You don't really feel the effects for 2, maybe 3 years. So when you take a class with, 4 projects in it, it shouldn't be surprising that 3 years later, you're still looking for some production there. And so, Stud had a class that missed numbers, followed by a class that hit numbers, but was not very high in terms of rankings. That was a lot of Ohio projects, and or Midwest projects, I guess. And so you're seeing the effects of that now, which is kind of the concern about how they finish with defensive end recruiting this year, is that the way they finish, missing on Keon Keeley and Damon Wilson and the guys, that's not going to hurt them on the field in 2023. It's going to hurt them on the field in like 24 and definitely in 25 if they don't address this. So it forces you into the portal. It forces you to readjust your numbers for the following year. And it's like you're playing catch up. And we've seen that in the secondary as well.
Taver Johnson.
Taver Johnson, the Alex Grinch, Taver Johnson, and then only 1 year of Halfley, so you lose Clark Phillips. That whole 18 months of hell is the reason the secondary is a problem right now. It's not because they didn't get the right guy in the 2022 class. That wasn't going to save you this year. It's the 2 or 3 classes before that where you didn't hit your number, you didn't get quality guys, and you just don't feel the effects right away. And so, long story short, having kind of back-to-back offensive line classes that are pretty blah, outside of Paris Johnson, is going to come home to roost this year. I think if they can't find a depth body or two, they've got to keep what they have. I think Matt Jones coming back would be really nice. And then you've got to find another body, or else you're an injury away from a problem.
Yeah, and you can look at the roster, and there's 3, 4, 5 guys that are never going to play at Ohio State.
No,
on the offensive line.
And you knew that. You should have known that in high school.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to like mention these guys and like go in on them. It's mean, and it's not their fault. I mean,
and I want to throw out right now too, somebody that was probably a little bit of a project, but then had, his life turned upside down. I want to send prayers out to Avery Henry, recently diagnosed with, a form of cancer. And, he's going to have to be going through a lot of things just to, for his health. And, just to couple with everything else, just the break right there. It's just unbelievable at some points. Didn't mean to derail the conversation with that, but I felt it was important to mention.
No,
I mean it's another factor to play into all this.
Gunnar Bennett, thank you for your super chat. We talked about this a little bit earlier, so you're going to get the fast version, but if you want to get the longer version, be sure to watch us on the replay. Does Day give up play calling next year?
Well, did we go around and say whether we think he will?
No, I don't know if we did. We talked about the mechanics. That he said something in his production, and like in a production meeting with Kirk Herbstreit leading into the Peach Bowl and all. And then we kind of talked about different always isn't better and everything else and how the mechanics may work. But let's go around the table. Is Ryan Day the primary play caller in 2023? Tony.
I will say no, because I think he saw how much his team was hurt by just the little things in games. And I think when he looks back at it, he'll realize it even more. And as a head coach, he can still have plenty of say in what is getting called and how it's getting called and what they're doing. But this would free him up. So I guess I will lock in my vote and say, yes, he gives up play calling. And, I can't believe I'm saying it, but it's also an eventuality. I think everybody eventually gives up the play calling.
Mark.
I think yes, in like September for sure, and then make sure whatever's delegated to the rest of the staff isn't a disaster.
It would be bad if he gives it up and then takes it back like a week later, you know.
Yeah, no, that is a nightmare scenario, because that is an admission of defeat. That is an admission that you made a bad decision. And we know that recruiting is all on the up and up, and nobody would ever point out Ryan Day can't even live by his own word. I mean, why would you want to go play there? Plus, it's cold. I mean, no. I agree. I think he gives it up to an extent. He's not your primary guy. He's certainly not going to have his headset program not to have the offensive channel on it. I'm sure there will be moments that there will be the Ryan veto power. How many vetoes will he have? Unlimited vetoes. But it is an eventuality. We do see coaches as they kind of go through their careers, go through doing it all to doing, focusing on different aspects. And I think one of the most crazy things that I had to see this year is Ohio State running false tempo. We're going to run tempo. No, we're going to back out of this. Oh, we're going to change the play. Okay, CJ's going to go up and tap Whippler on the butt. Okay, we got the play. Oh, wait, we're going to back out of it again. We don't know if we have the play. What? There's 3 seconds left. Oh, we don't know the mechanics to call a timeout and 5 yards penalty. And I saw that more than a couple times this year. And if you need,
I will say this:
you need to have a point after coach and everything else. You need to have a coach to say, get the GD play in.
I will say this though: was Urban Meyer not the king of the delay of game after a kickoff or after a freaking touchdown or something like? And so, just because this sounds good that the game management stuff's gonna be cleaned up, it doesn't always work out that way. I saw too many post kickoff, post touchdown delay games under Urban.
Well, it's because they start the clock earlier now.
Yeah, I get it. It's just like, it not to open old wounds, but didn't call a timeout at Happy Valley. Cost them a hell of a lot, a few years back. Like that's something. So,
you need to have a sanity coach.
Should be more on top of it, but he's got to actually be on top of it.
You need to have a coach that helps with the get back coach, that the coach that helps you with knowing when to go for 1 and when to go for 2 and not chasing points. The coach that keeps you from overthinking things. I mean, I think once you go on limited staff numbers, I mean, you could get somebody like that for, I don't know, $120 a year. For something like that. I think that's all something that needs to be there for the amount of bloat that's within a department. I mean, bloat away.
Kevin, did you give your answer on Day?
Oh, we're running out of time here. No, yeah, I think he does give. I did, but I never finished. I think he does give up the play calling. I think he has the unlimited vetoes, but I think he's going to realize that as long as he has trust in the guys who are calling the plays and that they are staying within his system, that there are things that will be better suited for this giant portion of the entire pie that has to go into the mechanics of being head coach at the Ohio State University.
Real quick, JJ asking, is Jack Sawyer a bust? Little known fact, Jack Sawyer led the Buckeyes in sacks this year as the 3rd or 4th defensive end on the field. So there you go. And he'll be right there with JT Tuimoloau on the field for the bulk of the snaps next year.
And I'll even say this about JT, who I know had some dominant moments, especially that Penn State game was unbelievable. I think a big key to next year's team, they need those guys to be what they're supposed to be. I would say that. I certainly wouldn't call Jack a bust. I mean, again, I think 4.5 sacks, kind of playing part-time, but these guys were top 10 players in the country coming out of high school. They need to be disruptive next year. That's if they're not, I think the defense is going to have some issues.
But I mean, as we're kind of sitting here talking about what does the 2023 defensive line need to look like, and we're going to go over the 2-hour mark, so be it. Are these guys seeing enough snaps? I mean, I'm asking the $1 million poison question right here, and I could see Tony just sitting there getting ready for a deep sigh. I mean, are the star players getting enough reps? I mean, it certainly has been an LJ calling card of, I want to have everybody fresh in the fourth quarter. Well, 85% Ohio State games, it doesn't matter what you are in the fourth quarter. You know what you are in the fourth quarter? On the bench with your pads off, looking in the crowd, slapping your teammate on the back. So it doesn't really matter at that point. Are the ones and the twos, I mean, I guess at this point, because of just the rotation of the line, are they seeing enough action, or are they spreading things so thin and then you're just wondering where these guys are in the big moments?
My idea next year is to play Mike Hall. I'm going to throw that out there. If anybody wants to take that up under advisement, please do so. I think he plays more, and the Ohio State defense looks better.
And put him at 3-tech, for God's sake. This is the defensive line version of Baron Browning right now, where I'm watching Baron Browning play Mike, and I'm like, why are you not using this guy on the edge? Even if you're not putting a hand in the dirt, put him at outside linebacker. Let him play in space. Stop this. And I feel the same way about Mike Hall.
I'm with you.
It's the weirdest thing. Like Tyleek is the big body. Why is he not playing one? And if he can't, if he just doesn't play that type of game for you, then I guess you got a really good rotation at 3 next year. But I would move Mike to the 3. That's what he was recruited to play.
Well, and I think next year, even if Tyleek Williams doesn't develop, Mike Hall and Ty Hamilton are your 2 best interior guys. Yeah. So, that kind of settles things right there if Tyleek doesn't take that next step up.
And yes, Caden Curry needs to play next year. I agree with all the comments on that. And I've long been a big Caden Curry fan. So is Tony. We got to see him early in his high school career, and he's just, I went through this at the All-American Bowl down here last year. People were writing up weird stuff about him. I'm like, are you watching the same practices? He's completely disruptive.
I mean, he was great.
Oh, but he's only, he might only be 245 pounds. Okay. So he'll get bigger. Don't worry. Just he's a disruptive player. And
he won't get taller.
Yeah, exactly. Is he really 6'4"? No, he's probably 6'3". Who cares? It's okay. Won't be the first 6'3" defensive lineman to be good. So. I
mean, people are acting like he's as short as Roosevelt Nix was. I mean, Roosevelt Nix was maybe 5'10", and he still was good enough to be all MAC first team defense as a freshman.
Yes. And I infamously had a couple of Big Ten assistants who recruited Central Ohio tell me that there was no way he could play for them. And then Roosevelt Nix went on to play for the Pittsburgh Steelers for 8 years. So he could play for the Pittsburgh Steelers, but he
can't play for your middling.
Couldn't play for your 5 and 7 Big Ten team, apparently. But that's, we'll go 4 hours if we start going into those types of stories.
Well, it sounds like we need to do the show a little bit more often. I mean, but we started off here on the Skull Session Recruiting Podcast talking the All-American Bowl. We kind of dovetailed into a little bit of everything, but I think in a lot of ways it was very cathartic. We were able to talk about a lot, not necessarily focus solely on the disappointment of the Peach Bowl. This is probably the most that we've been able in an official capacity outside of the message board itself to just talk about Ohio State football in general without, just a lot of anger.
I can get angry if you want.
Well, there's always tomorrow.
Kevin,
Tony, I need you to write those other
Kevin's
7
the
stories.
angry one on the staff. Kevin's the angry one on the staff. Him and his cats.
The cats are angry.
Cats.
I may or may not have had a little beverage to keep me calm here, and it needs a refill. So I think we're about done. But any final thoughts from the crew? I mean, I'm taking over Mark's show. Mark, lead us to the finish line.
No, we appreciate everyone kind of tuning in here, asking questions. These are always more fun when they're not scripted and we can just kind of let you guys carry the flow of the conversation. But yes, as the Caden Curry continues, yes, Caden Curry must play. I agree. Caden Curry must play. My goodness, Caden Curry could win presidential election at this point. Look at all these.
Is he the backup quarterback? Feels like he's the backup quarterback.
You're right. So that's a QB2 is or DE2 is the new QB2, I guess. Yeah, I just appreciate everyone listening. Thanks everyone for your support. This channel has grown exponentially since August. We're at almost 7,500 subscribers to this channel. I thought we'd be lucky to get to 5,000 by the end of the football season. We like 50% by 50% hit my best expectations. So appreciate everyone's support. And then just let us know what you want to see on the channel. If you want to see more of these, let us know. We'll be happy to do them. I know, especially in the off season, more opportunities for us to kind of get together and do this type of stuff. So hit the like button. If you're not subscribed to the channel already, please just do so. That helps us out. It costs nothing. Just let you know kind of when we go live and when there's new videos. But again, I'll have another update for everyone here in the next day or two from San Antonio. I'll have them throughout the weekend. And we'll see you next time. Thanks again for watching and listening.